Hello everyone. My greetings to each one of you. This is the second session on determination of income and employment. In the previous sessions, you have understood the basic tenets of classical theory, which has been criticized by J.M. Keynes. According to Keynes, output does not depend on employment, but it depends on aggregate demand in the economy. So aggregate demand comprises of consumption demand, investment demand, government demand, and demand for net exports. I am Poonam Vohra from Macroeconomics Learning Center. This session focuses on consumption demand as discussed by J.M. Keynes. So let's understand the concept. For consumption function, let's first understand the meaning of consumption demand. Consumption demand is the total demand for goods and services for consumption purposes by all the households in the country. So the level of households' consumption demand depends upon disposable income, which is written as consumption is a function of disposable income. If disposable income increases, consumption expenses also increases. But by how much will consumption expenses change? To change in disposable income depends upon propensity to consume, that is, desire to consume. There are two aspects to propensity to consume or desire to consume, that is, average propensity to consume and marginal propensity to consume, where average propensity to consume refers to the ratio of consumption expenses to corresponding level of income, that is C by Y, whereas marginal propensity to consume is the ratio of change in consumption due to change in income, that is delta C by delta Y. Keynes formulated his psychological law of consumption. It states that as income increases, consumption also increases, but by less than proportionate amount. Now let us understand consumption function with the help of a numerical example and a diagrammatic presentation. Consumption function is based on psychological law of consumption and is represented as consumption is equal to C is autonomous consumption, B is marginal propensity to consume, and Y is equal to level of income, where C is greater than 0 and B is greater than 0 but less than 1. Autonomous consumption means when income is 0, consumption is positive. Such consumption expenditure is incurred from past savings. Since past accumulated savings gets reduced by that amount, it is also termed as dissavings. B is the slope of consumption function, which is marginal propensity to consume or change in consumption due to change in income. By assumption, marginal propensity to consume is positive and ranges between 0 and 1. Let us understand this numerical example. When income is 0, consumption is positive, which is 40. Now this positive consumption is possible from the past savings. So in this case, savings gets reduced by 40. Now when income increases from 0 to 100, consumption increases from 40 to 120, that is by 80. If you notice that when income is increasing by 100 in each case, consumption is increasing by 80 in each case. That means with increase in income, consumption also increases, but by less than proportionate amount. Exactly as explained by psychological law of consumption. Diagrammatically, income is on x-axis, consumption is on y-axis. This represents, C bar represents autonomous consumption. That is, when income is zero, consumption is positive. So with increase in income, consumption also increases, but by less than proportionate amount, and the slope is given by marginal propensity to consume. So consumption function is upward sloping. So it shows there is a direct relation between consumption and income. Average propensity to consume. It is the ratio of consumption expenses to corresponding level of income. That is C by Y. If consumption is 70 and income is 100, APC would be 0.7, or it implies that 70% of the income is spent on consumption. Let's understand the tabular presentation. Continuing with the same example, that income is increasing by 100 in each case, whereas consumption is increasing by 80 in each case. So APC would be then, for option A, it would be 40 by 0, not defined. For B, it would be 120 by 100, which is 1.2. For C, consumption is 200, income is 200, APC is 1. For D, it is 280 divided by 300, 0.93. For E, it is 360 divided by 400, that is 0.9. One can find APC diagrammatically also using the same diagram. This is a consumption function, and suppose we take any point on the curve. Here let's take point A. Corresponding to point A is point N on consumption and point W on income. So C is ON, consumption is ON, income is OW. It will be average propensity to consume at point A would be then ON divided by OW. One needs to note that average propensity to consume is greater than 1 as long as C is greater than Y. It is equal to 1 as long as C is equal to Y. Less than 1 as long as C is less than Y. APC falls with increase in income. As we have seen in the table also, it falls with increase in income. Most important is that APC can never be 0 as consumption can never be 0. Marginal propensity to consume. It is change in consumption units due to change in income and is represented as delta C by delta Y. Let's have a look at the table. These are 5 options. Income is increasing from 0 to 100 in each case. Consumption is increasing by 80 in each case. So one can find MPC very easily applying the formula delta C. Delta C is from 40 to 120, which is 80, divided by delta Y, which is 100. So 80 by 100, for this option it is 0.8. For option A, MPC cannot be defined because change is not known here. For option C, once again there is a change in income from 100 to 200. Change in consumption is from 120 to 200. Once again it is 100 and it is 80. So 80 by 100 you get 0.8. Similarly, one finds MPC in each case, and one can observe that MPC does not change, it remains same, 0.8, implying that change in consumption due to change in income is to the extent of 80%. So, having observed this numerical example, one can deduce that the value of MPC varies between 0 and 1. It implies that incremental income is either spent or on consumption or it is saved. If entire additional income is consumed, then MPC will be equal to 1. If entire additional income is saved, then MPC is equal to 0. Diagrammatically, if initial consumption is OG at income OH, new consumption is OF at new income OK, then change in consumption is JF by HK. Now assess yourself and identify the correct option out of the 4 options given for a statement. Consumption function is a functional relationship between option A, aggregate demand and aggregate supply, B, consumption and national income, C, consumption and aggregate demand, and D, consumption and investment. Please check your answer. The correct answer is option B. Consumption function is the functional relationship between consumption and national income. Now look at this question and identify the correct option out of the 4 options as given for a statement. Consumption function is option A, positively sloped curve and always begins from the origin. B, positively sloped curve and can begin from the origin. C, positively sloped curve and always begins from above the origin. And D, positively sloped curve and can begin from below the origin. Please check your answer. The correct answer is option C. Consumption function is positively sloped curve and always begins from above the origin. Now, after having understood the consumption demand, it is easy to establish relationship between consumption and income. Continuing with the same numerical example, where income increases by 100 in each case and consumption increases by 80 in each case. One can show the same diagrammatically and one finds that consumption demand is upward sloping, beginning from some positive value, which is 40 in this case, at income 0. Also, 45-degree line is drawn for reference as it indicates the equality between consumption and income. It immediately tells us whether consumption spending is equivalent to, greater than or less than the level of income. So consumption function crosses 45-degree line at point E. This is called break-even point because here consumption is same as income. It also implies 0 savings. Any point to the left of point E indicates that consumption is more than the income. So, household must find funds to meet such consumption expenses as income is less. This shortage in income forces them to use their past savings or sell their assets which they acquired in the past or resort to borrowing. Whatever the case may be, it ends up being liquidating their own assets, which is called as dis-savings. So when consumption is more than income, it leads to dis-savings or there are negative savings. Any point to the right of E shows that income is more and consumption is less, or consumption is less than the income. That means whole of the income is not consumed. A part of income is saved. So when consumption is less than income, there exist positive savings. To sum up, when consumption is more than income, there are negative savings. When consumption is equal to income, zero savings. When consumption is less than the income, there are positive savings. I hope you have understood the concept of consumption demand and functional relationship of consumption and income. With this, the session comes to an end. The next session would focus on savings function. Till then, keep reading, keep learning, and keep practicing.